mental health seems to be taking a bit of a dive in regards to the way men, especially, are coping with their emotions and their feelings. We're going to do a series on suicide prevention. And to do so, we've asked some guests to come in and talk to us about their experience with suicide and what that word means to them. Hi, welcome to the Secret Men's Business Podcast. This is Joey Buzzatall. And on today's show, we're going to be speaking to Mark, who is going to tell us about his experience with his emotions and his mental health that may have led him to consider taking his life. Mark, how are you?
I'm good, Joe. How are you?
Thank you so much for talking
Thank
to us.
you
Because
ever so much.
I wanted just to firstly say that I really feel that it takes a brave person to talk about their mental health. And trying to get people to talk on this podcast has been very difficult. So
Yeah.
I remember you being the first person that said, yes, I'll help. So thank you for that. So before we start, do you want to maybe just tell the viewers, the listeners, a little bit about you and maybe where you're from and about your life?
So I'm born in Adelaide and did the overseas thing in my early 20s, came back home early 30s, and I work in aged care. So I've been in aged care probably for nearly 20 years. The start of that was, and before that I was in hospitality. So I was always having that serving approach.
Being of service to people.
Yeah. And then I just thought aged care was more meaningful to me, because even when I was young, I'd just be comfortable with the older person than
Right.
people my own age.
Okay.
And yeah, it's been rewarding.
That's good. I mean, like, I've spoken to a few people that work in aged care, and I do think it's they've all said the same thing, that it's a rewarding career, and it's a beautiful experience to be with people. And one of the guys I interviewed was saying that we don't necessarily, as a society, welcome the old people, and he just sort of reminded us to, they're the same. There's no difference in the way that they feel or think. It's just more the fact that they may just be older.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's becoming more, more open, more acceptable, and plus with the LGBTI older person, that's very important. In which I work for Rest Haven in Adelaide,
right,
and I'm on the resource group for LGBTI. So even like Rest Haven has acknowledged our community.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah.
So this podcast is about suicide prevention. And do you want to just, I guess, share with us when you first started to notice things going on with your mental health?
I think probably when I was overseas and being in a church environment, so a Pentecostal evangelical church environment, which I was in my early 20s, so about 23 in London, and I realised that, and it wasn't a healthy environment.
Right. And what did you start noticing? Was it depression, or was it anxiety, or was it just that you knew something wasn't right?
I think it was definitely anxiety. I had really severe anxiety, and where it got to the point where it was out of control.
Mm.
And I remember I just had this fear of being around people, and right. I imagined every individual could look straight through me,
right,
and like read every thought. Yeah. So yeah, and it just got really out of hand.
Were you did you carry that on your own, or were you able to share that with anyone?
In my 20s, because I was in London, so I only had a sister in England, and of course it was that mentality of uh, toughen up,
Mm,
um, just pull through it, and also then on top of that, it was you're a Christian, so you're not supposed to be depressed. You're supposed to be sort of strong, powerful, an example to the rest of the community. So
mm.
it was like, holy shit. Mm,
Yeah, I mean, it is a lot. I mean, I'm Catholic, so I sort of relate a lot to what you're saying. It is a lot, isn't it, to have that guilt put on you by a church or a parent or a body telling you how to feel and what you can and can do. So
yeah.
you end up getting this feeling of not being right. And for you, when you had your those thoughts or that anxiety, how long or when did it start to escalate in regards to you thinking about your own life?
Well, it was just and just opening up to someone and say that I do suffer from depression,
Mm,
and even just getting to that point, it's funny enough to say a weight goes off your shoulder because you've actually acknowledged what you suffer from
mm.
to another individual. So you've opened up that part of your life that you uh, are so ashamed of.
Yeah. It sort of in a way normalizes it because I think sometimes people feel that they're the only person. And
Mm.
especially again when we're young and in that time, that era that we both grew up in, there wasn't very many resources to help us. So how did you start thinking about suicidal thoughts? Like what
So
took you from pain? Yeah.
it really came to full force. So I only came out late in life. So I came out December 2017
Okay. So
after
that's not long ago,
the
is it?
marriage equality
Hmm.
um, passed in November, was it?
Yeah.
November 17, yeah. And so in my mind, I thought, now that I've acknowledged my true self, everything else will fall into place.
Yeah.
And that's not so.
Well, it hasn't been that long ago, so you're sort of like now learning how to
Yeah.
be you.
And plus, yeah, I found it very difficult to. I think what was missing, uh, especially in those early days, was um, a loss of connection
Okay. To
because,
to anyone
yeah,
or to the gay community or
yeah, um, because you have to realize sort of for the past 32 years, I was told to stay away from the gay community. So,
right.
like, literally, so coming out, it's like, who do I turn to? It's like I have
Mm.
no idea where to go. I did reach out to a guy in Sydney who referred me to an affirming church here in Adelaide,
Right.
and they were a great support, and I have made many good friends there.
That's good.
Even though now I've totally left the church.
Right. Um, so when you go back to that time before coming out, did you really consider that your life was worth getting, were you really considering terminating your life because it was what stressful or hard or was it something else that was causing you to think those thoughts?
I think it was yeah, because when you're in that depressed state, um, it's like and I'm going to be quite descriptive, so because that's what sort of has helped me
Yeah.
move forward. So to me, it was like being in this dark room where you don't know where the door is, and you're just feeling the walls, and there's no way out.
Right. And
And
that
and
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 that went on for how long?
it sort of it went on for sort of on and off, but recently, uh, due to the fact of having that not much of a connection in the gay community,
Mm.
the thought was, if this is, um, I've put all in that hard work in coming out, and if this is what life has to give me, I can't go on any further.
Right. Okay. And how did you then reconcile those thoughts, or what do you feel happened to help you to feel like you were connecting? Because I understand what you're saying.
Ye-
It's especially when you're older, you don't have the necessity. When you're 20 and you go out and you get drunk and do all those things. But
Yeah,
when you're older, there's things that we don't do compared to when we're younger. So
yeah.
for you, it was probably understanding your thoughts. How did you start to flip that thought process around, or how did
I
you?
think
What?
for me, it was just a matter of um, somehow um, live in hope.
Right.
And the
And
way I was thinking about it earlier, and it was like I sort of relate to it as a cross lotto. Like people continually go on cross lotto. Just one day, I might get that lucky number,
mm,
and that's how I felt. It was like, um, yes, I wanted to get rid of my life, but then I thought, well, maybe just one day something might happen, something might turn around,
mm,
and what about if I miss it and I'm not here?
yeah. So we
So
we call that ambivalent. So you found something, even though your life was saying to you, "I don't want this to be my life if this is what it is." After all the hard work, you still had this hope, or this connection to something that kept you going. Which,
to something, and I
yeah,
don't know what. Yeah,
do you think that was your sort of your guide to get through it? Like, do you believe that hope was the thing that allowed you to get through that period of your life?
yeah, I think so, definitely.
Yeah.
And then just recently, like I've actually started to really take a huge turnaround of exercising and eating healthier, and yeah, and finding new connections
Yeah.
that I've never experienced before in my life. So
Mm.
yeah,
And you've also, we've had talks and chats about, you've also channeled your energy in towards discovering and exploring and educating yourself. How has that worked for you? Like, has that helped for you to, to connect with things that you may not have done before and be open to
yeah,
learning?
yeah. So as you know, like recently, just learning how to meditate,
Mm.
and which is, again, it's like you open a door um, of possibilities. So yeah, and learning the art of meditation that I was taught for so many years in the church, not to even think about it,
Mm.
because it was a an ancient teaching, and it didn't line with the Bible.
Mm.
So um, yeah, so yeah, and it's amazing.
Yeah. And so, how have you been able to let go of the church, or do you feel like you have?
Yeah, yeah, I have. Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't feel like you're getting any guilt or anything coming up?
No, not at all.
That's good.
Not at all.
Now, do you mind if I ask you a personal question? You could say no if you don't want to answer it, but I'm just curious to know, was there ever a moment that you got close to taking your life?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, do you mind talking about that, or
Yeah.
do you mind
So yeah,
helping us to
sure.
understand what got you out of it?
Not a problem. Um, yeah, because when I went through that really dark period, and so after coming out, I had a concession of other things happening in my life where literally within probably 8 months, so I had to deal with coming out. Then I was rushed to hospital with an acute DVT clot
Right.
that nearly entered, that just blocked my whole left side artery.
Mm.
Um, and then a few months after that, my mum passed away. And looking back on that, it was like, sort of like, wow, sort of just everything was happening like a boulder. So, so with the medication that I'm on, apixaban, so it's a more advanced medication than blood thinners. And I actually looked up, I Googled what would happen if I took an overdose of
Wow.
those tablets.
Mm.
So, uh, and obviously, you would bleed to death inside internally. And they said it's very painful. So I thought, yeah, well, maybe I don't like pain. I don't handle it. So I thought maybe I better not do that.
Mm.
And I don't know, I've always had as I'm laughing about it now, but I thought maybe if I do something, it probably won't work anyway. And
Mm.
I have to face reality.
Mm. I mean,
So,
do you think that process was a wake up for you? Like,
yeah, because
you
it's
didn't do
like,
it. Yeah, you didn't do anything, did you? But
it's very,
you still went
yeah,
through it.
yeah, you're feeling extremely vulnerable. And it's like you're you're leaning on a cliff,
Mm.
and you can't see the bottom because there's just there's no end. And it's like, and I think the most frightening point is that you realize that you do have the power to do it,
Mm.
and it's all in your hands.
Yeah.
So you can end it within an instant.
Mm.
um
Do you feel that you are? Do you feel sensitive, or do you feel anything when you hear about like young men that are doing it? Like how there seems
oh
there seems to be a lot of young men at the moment committing
yeah.
suicide. So, what do you feel in regards to what they? Yeah, I just want to know what you do. You notice anything about yourself when you're hearing that news?
Yeah, it breaks my heart, um because um since I've been there, and of course, yeah, because you feel helpless, you feel numb, you just can't feel anything. Yeah, you don't feel any emotions, nothing.
Mm,
And um and you feel it's just easy to slip away.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
if
so
any,
when I
if
do
it,
hear it, yeah, it does, it just really upsets me.
yeah,
And this is why um we need to encourage, um yeah, especially we need to encourage men to openly talk about it.
yeah, and that's why we're very thankful for you to actually be doing that. Like, if any of our listeners are feeling, and there are certain people in the Secret Men's Business group that are going through a hard time, and if any of the listeners are going through that, what advice would you give them if they are going into that dark place? Um, what advice can you give them from your experience in regards to how they could maybe help themselves or what they could do in regards to moving forward?
So obviously we have a great organisation in Australia, sort of nationwide, which is Lifeline,
Right.
and they're fully trained people on the phone, and yeah, like, and I forget what the number is. I think it's one. Yeah, I forget the number,
I'll have
but
it. I'll have it. I'll have it in the link below.
yeah, um, and yeah, just to, even though you can't feel anything, like you feel shit, but yeah, just please reach out to someone, just someone.
Yeah. So you're
Yeah.
saying that even though it's dark and you're feeling like everything's over, reaching out to someone may help you to understand, because at the end of the day, those thoughts are thoughts, aren't they? They're just thoughts that are driving you towards an action that may not necessarily be true.
Mm.
You know, yeah. So thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing your experience. I mean, I again, I totally agree with you. It's important for us to share and to be open without being embarrassed, because men have that embarrassed part of them that feel weak or vulnerable. I mean, can I ask you now, how are you going now? Like, how do you feel your transformation is today? Like, how would you describe it where you are today?
Um, and I guess it's important also uh, to know what your trigger points are as well.
Mm,
And if you're starting to feel those or have a sense of those trigger points, it's good to just to do something completely different, like maybe go out for a walk, or just try and get out of that thinking mode.
yeah,
Um, and it's also because a lot of the time I was called, um, I was named, a sensitive person.
right,
But now realizing that, and because like being sensitive, especially being a guy, it was you were name called, yeah,
yeah,
blah blah, and a sense of a weakness because you're sensitive. But now I've turned that around, and it's more that I'm in tune with my energy.
yeah.
I mean,
And you do realize that being sensitive is a gift, and that's
well,
what
I think,
and that's what
well, I don't know, I think everyone's got it.
sure, but like that's the thing. I think most people now want to be more sensitive or want to be more open or more vulnerable. So that's what we're heading towards. And for a very, very long time, men have been told. I mean, if you think about it, from the age of 3, if we start crying, we're told to be quiet, stop
Yeah,
crying. So
yeah.
now we're starting to take our ownership back of the fact that it's okay to have emotions and to be a whole spectrum of things. We just can't be tough. I mean, that doesn't really work, does it?
No, it doesn't. Not at all. Yeah, and it's
So
taking, and it's taking ownership of your life. Can I just talk about something that I
yes,
experienced
sure.
a couple of weeks ago?
Hmm.
Um, so before I got involved in the church, so between the age of 20 to 23, so I lived as a gay man in London. um, and I especially had a relationship with a man that, looking back on it now, I truly loved him and he loved me. But then I got involved in the church, so I had to, I literally just pushed that aside. And growing up in the church, every time I had that thought, I believe it was a test. That was my
Okay.
thinking. And so since coming out, I and it's still happening. There are always thought patterns, emotions that come to the surface. So I'm learning now to, as they come to the surface, I'm learning to deal with them.
Okay.
So this thought of the guy that I was with, so beforehand I would push it aside and bury it, but it kept coming back.
Mm.
And this is where, and I know you've done it, and I know a lot of guys in SMB have done it with child therapy.
Yeah, but in a child?
Yeah, the inner child. So what I actually did was, in my mind, I had to go back. But even though I was 23, so I wasn't a child, I was an adult. But I had to go back and forgive that 23-year-old for abandoning him and leaving him.
Right.
So there was that. Then I reconnected to that part of my past.
Wow. And you
Yeah.
found it to be quite therapeutic for you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It was. It's quite. Yeah, quite healing. Yeah.
Yeah. Like before we finish, do you think that that is the key? The key is you've got to do something. Do you know what I mean? Like you've got to just, it sounds to me that you were exploring for things to make your life make more sense to you and for you to be more comfortable in it. So do you agree that, do you really think that you could get to where you want to get to without therapy or doing anything or talking to anyone? Do you think any of our listeners who think that they'll just, sometimes people say, "Oh, I'll wait till it's over by itself," or are you a believer now that you've got to do the work?
Yeah. You've got to do the work.
Yeah, thank you, because that's I guess the message that we're trying to pass on without people feeling uncomfortable. And the work isn't scary, is it? I mean, it could be tough, but it's
Well,
not scary.
it
Or
can
what?
be scary. Yeah,
Okay.
at the beginning,
Mm,
because you're still in that vulnerable state.
right. Okay. So, what would you say to
Um,
someone to keep going? How would you? See, I didn't find it scary, but it's true that other people
but
may.
then
So, is
everybody's different. So, and
yes,
everybody will have a totally different experience of, because it's their journey.
yeah. So, what would you say to someone that might find it scary? How did you get through that?
Um, I think personally, just to have some form of contact
Okay.
with another person.
Yep. So that stabilized it, did it?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, for our listeners, the thing is that everyone's going to experience different things in regards to their own journey. So, I guess finding that support, and there seems to be a lot more support in 2020 moving forward compared to, say,
yeah.
20, 30 years ago. So, the main thing is that we talked about Lifeline and we talked about other ways for people to connect. So, thank you for sharing your story, Mark. I really honestly appreciate it. Like, hand on heart, that you were able to do that and just feel a sense of truth. And I think everyone listening would feel that. So, thank you.
Thanks, Joey.
Okay, we'll catch up with you soon. So you've been listening to the Secret Men's Business podcast. This is Joey Buzzertool, and be mindful that the podcast's out on Monday and Thursday. Don't forget to hit like, and we'll see you next time, guys. Thank you.